Hey everyone, welcome to today's webinar. We're going to give everyone just a few minutes, maybe 30 more seconds here to get logged in, and then we will get started. I'm going to start off with just a few housekeeping notes for those of you who are already on, and then I'll repeat this again here in just a second. But we will be recording today's session. And so we will be sending that out this afternoon, and Amy is going to provide us any helpful links that she has throughout the presentation. And we'll also be sending out the PDF of the slides. So you, if there's something you want to reference back or some information here that you want to share with a board member or a colleague, you'll definitely be able to do that after the presentation later this afternoon. You will get that email. So today, for today's webinar, so happy to have Amy Eisenstein with us. Amy is going to be chatting with us about 4 simple steps to raising major gifts virtually and in person. So really excited. Obviously a really amazing topic as we're still working through, the nuances with the coronavirus situation and things like that. So again, so for today, the housekeeping notes session will be recorded. We'll be providing a PDF afterwards. We do want to keep this as interactive as possible, so we'd love for you to ask questions throughout. I think Amy's got a couple questions she'll be asking the audience, so go ahead and click over on your GoToWebinar control panel, open up that questions section, that questions tab, and get ready because Amy's going to ask some questions. She'll have you give some answers there, but we would also love for you to ask as many questions as you have throughout, and I'll try to group the themes together, and we'll try to make sure we get the most pressing questions answered as we go through the presentation. So without further ado, Amy, if I missed anything, I can go ahead and pass it off to you.
Yeah, I think we're good to go. Thank you. All right. Hi, everybody. I'm Amy Eisenstein. I am the CEO and co-founder of the Capital Campaign Toolkit. I also blog at amyeisenstein.com, so I'd love for you to visit me there. You can learn all about me if you're interested. But today we're going to focus on 4 simple steps to raising major gifts virtually and in person when we get back to it. But really, we're talking about raising major gifts, whether we're in a pandemic or not, but especially now in a pandemic. And excuse me, I'm so sorry. First, I want you to just think about what's holding you back, right? What's stopping you? What's preventing you from raising major gifts now, prior to, and during COVID? If you feel like chatting in some things that are preventing you from raising major gifts, go ahead. Otherwise, just think about what's holding you back, what's stopping you, what's preventing you. As we move through, hopefully I'm going to give you some tools and strategies to be able to overcome some of those obstacles that have been getting in your way. So there's some really good news, and that is that there has been millions of dollars raised virtually this year. In the past 12 months, in the past 18 months, well, not quite 18, I take it back, 12 months we've been in this pandemic now, millions and millions of dollars raised on Zoom, on video chat, even over the phone. And I have to say, prior to the pandemic, we would never have considered doing a virtual solicitation over Zoom unless in the most extreme of circumstances, like the person, lived in Australia and we just were never going to get to see them. But in almost any other circumstances, the recommendation probably would have been to wait and sit down with the person. Now, although I think we will get back to asking for major gifts in person, I think what we've learned is that asking virtually is so effective and so efficient that it is going to be a new tool in our major gifts toolbox for years and years to come.
So Amy, that's what a lot of folks are saying here in the chat is, not being able to arrange in-person meetings, difficult building rapport in a digital space. It's easier in person.
Yeah.
Get someone to chat. Even someone mentioned that they are with a senior living community and most of potential major donors are residents in that community, but she can't get on campus right now. So that does feel like what you were just mentioning, the thing everyone's feeling in the questions or chat.
Right, great. Thank you so much, Bradley. I appreciate that. I have to tell you, don't let the pandemic stop you. Those really are excuses. And what I have seen, I've witnessed hundreds, thousands of development directors and executive directors just like you getting on the phone, getting on video chat. I mean, think about those residents in that long-term care facility. They are lonely. If you can get through to them on the phone, they are going to be delighted to chat with you. And I know that it is challenging because we can't see people in person, but you know, certainly at the beginning of the pandemic, I don't know if it's starting to change a little bit as people venture out, but more people were actually available for phone calls, for video chat. So, you know, don't hesitate to pick up the phone and say, hey, listen, I work at XYZ organization, and one of the most important jobs, one of my most critical responsibilities is connecting with our donors and supporters. So I'm calling to say hello, find out what's going on, learn why you care about this cause, and talk to you about some of the needs of the organization, right? And so don't wait, don't hesitate. You need the money now, go out and do your fundraising. So, all right, let's keep going. So a fundraising myth, everyone gives the same amount. So this is some major gift fundraising 101 that I'm gonna give you before we dive in. And so if you ask your board members or people who don't understand fundraising how to raise money, if you say you want to raise $100,000, they might say, well, let's just find 100 people to give $1,000 each. And while I agree that the math works, 100 people giving $100,000, $1,000 each does equal $100,000, you will find very quickly that it is very hard to find 100 people who want to give $1,000 each. So, and honestly, that's not the way fundraising works. Fundraising works by the 80-20 rule. So 80% of your dollars, your fundraising dollars, likely come from 20% of your donors. And this is known as the 80-20 rule or Pareto's principle. You may have heard it. And it applies in all areas of our lives. Think about it. 20% of drivers cause 80% of accidents, right? We could use all sorts of examples from all sorts of fields, but it works in fundraising too. And that is that about 20% of your donors are going to give 80% of your dollars. So what we're going to do today is focus on those top 20% of your donors. Sometimes it's even more extreme than that. We could call it the 90-10 rule. So who are your top 10% of your donors who could potentially give you 90% of your dollars? So here I have a very basic gift table for $100,000 I just mentioned. If you want to raise $100,000, you're going to need one gift in the range of $20,000. So your first gift should be about 20% of your goal. And as you can see here from this example, the top 12 donors get you to 70% of your goal. And that is how fundraising works. So when we talk about raising major gifts in a pandemic and throughout in the future, you really want to focus on your top donors. All right, so first sort of poll question, we're going to do an unofficial poll. We're going to use the questions box as Bradley mentioned before. So what we want to, if we're going to talk about major gifts, we have to know what a major gift is at your organization. So just put A, B, C, or D in the questions tab. Is it under $1,000 at your organization? Is it $1,000 to $5,000, $5,000 to $10,000, or over $10,000? What do you consider a major gift at your organization? That's the question on the table. Oops, sorry, I seem to have lost my cursor here. Okay, here we go. All right. So we've got lots of B's, a few C's, A, B. Okay, a wide range. Okay, $500 is it for Natalie. Thank you for sharing. All right, so we've got major gifts all over the place. And the reason that I ask that and why it's important to know what it is at your organization is that if you're going to be serious about raising major gifts, you have to know approximately what a major gift is or what major gifts means to your organization. Because if you ask some board members, they may say, a major gift is $1 million. That's what we see in the newspaper, organizations presenting big checks or $100 million to universities. Well, that's not the reality for the vast majority of nonprofits, and it's probably not true at your organization. It's certainly not where you're going to start raising major gifts. So we just want to be realistic in terms of what kind of gift would make a difference at your organization. What are your board members and your executive director and you capable of raising right now with the donor base that you have, with the board members that you have? It's different at every organization. I started working at a domestic violence shelter. There, we considered a major gift $1,000. But at my university right down the street where I went to work next, we didn't talk about major gifts till $25,000 and up. At other organizations, it's more or less. So just in terms of knowing why it's important, a few reasons. One is donor recognition, right? You're not going to put a plaque on the wall for every single donor. And the executive director is probably not going to be able to pick up the phone and call every donor or handwrite a note. So what is that major gift level that you're going to do different types of donor recognition at? The second reason it's important to know what a major gift is at your organization is we have to know how to track our metrics, right? Are you raising more major gifts or less major gifts this year? And we have to know what that is. And finally, it's a time management thing. What size gift does it make sense for you to go sit down and ask somebody for, or spend time trying to get them on Zoom, right? Or on the phone. So it doesn't make sense probably to call or sit down with someone on Zoom for a $50 gift or a $100 gift, but it might make sense at $1,000 or $5,000 or $10,000. All right, here we go. All right, so today we're going to talk about how to raise major gifts virtually, even in a pandemic, and we're going to follow these 4 steps. So step 1 is donor identification. Who are you going to raise major gifts from? And it's really critical to figure this out because as we talked about, it's not all of your donors. It's not everybody in your donor database. It's a few select individuals that can really make a difference at your organization. Step 2 is cultivation. That's building relationships. Step 3 is solicitation. That's the actual ask. And step 4 is stewardship. That's the thank you and the follow-up process. And that's what we're going to look at today. How is it the same and how is it different now that we're in a pandemic? What will change when we hopefully come out of the pandemic? But really, how do we raise dollars right now, today, virtually, even in a pandemic? And you can. I've seen it all year. It is, not only is it possible, we're figuring out that it is effective and efficient. And so you want to be raising money virtually right now this way. So step 1, donor identification. Who are you going to raise money from? So honestly, it's the people that are closest to your organization. It's board members, staff members, volunteers, people who are closest to your organization, maybe clients, depending on what type of organization you have. If you're a hospital or a healthcare agency, or lots of different organizations, an arts organization, an environmental organization, people that you're working with might be good potential donors. If you are working at a social service agency, maybe less so, but depending on who is able to make those big gifts and the closest people to your organization, current donors, your largest donors, your most loyal donors, and on out from the circles. The reason it's important to understand this is because I get phone calls all the time from people asking me, can you help us find major donors? As if they're somehow out there, right? Or maybe you've had a board member suggest, how about Bill Gates, or how about Oprah Winfrey? And if they're not connected to your organization, if you don't know them, if they're not engaged in the community, then no matter how much money they have, they're not good potential donors for your organization. And we use this handy little acronym, ABC, to remind us of the importance of this. So A stands for access. Do you have access to the person? To me, that means, will they respond to an email? Will they pick up the phone if you call? Will they get back to you? If not, they're not a good prospective donor for your organization. And so sometimes I have people telling me, I've called and called and called and called and called, and I've emailed, and they don't respond. Guess what? They're telling you that they're not interested. And, on the one hand, I don't want you to go away thinking I can call them once, and if they don't respond, then I don't have to follow up, because we do have to follow up. People are busy, they're distracted, they have other priorities. So I'm not saying call once and then assume that they're not interested. It will take repeated calls and outreach in a variety of different mechanisms by a variety of different people. But it's a good opportunity to reach out to your board members and say, does anybody know this person? Look on LinkedIn, find out who are you connected to that is connected to the person. It's much more likely that your potential donor or your prospective donor will respond or pick up the phone to somebody they know or somebody in their network than somebody they don't know. But anybody who is already a donor at your organization is not a cold lead. They've already given to your organization. They've raised their hand and said, I'm interested. And so work on that access. B is for belief. They believe in your cause. They believe in your mission. And C is for capacity. They have the financial ability to make the size gift that you're looking for. And that's also why it's important to know what a major gift is at your organization. Because if a major gift is $10,000, you don't need to be looking for millionaires and billionaires. You can look for people in your community that are able to give that type of gift. So finally, we're going to be looking at people who we want to start with our existing donors, people who are already giving to our organization, supporters of our organization, and looking at how high do they score in terms of A and B from the previous slide, access and belief. That's our affinity score. How much do they care? How involved are they? And then the capacity score, up and down, do they have the ability to make a big gift? So the people that score high on all those fronts, they're your best prospective donors. So in my experience, I tell people that are just getting started raising major gifts that you want to start with a list of about 20 prospective donors, that you're going to work through this system, this cycle of step 1, 2, 3, and 4 here on the screen. Because if you start with a list of 100 people or 200 people or 500 people, what's going to happen is that you're going to be overwhelmed and you're not going to outreach to any of them. It's too many people to start with. And so you want to start with a manageable list and a number of people that you can actually develop and maintain relationships with. Eventually you may be able to manage relationships with 100 or 150 people, but if you're wearing multiple hats at your organization, if you're the development director or the executive director and you have lots of responsibilities, start with a smaller list. And then once you've asked for and received major gifts from these individuals, you can certainly add to your list, but start small. All right, now we're going to talk about step 2, which is cultivation. So how are we going to build relationships with these people virtually now that we can't see people, the ones that we identified? So let's talk about that. So first, what is cultivation? What we're talking about when we say the word cultivation is relationship building. And when you think of a typical relationship, we're talking about, person to person. And we are to some extent here too, but it really is about a relationship between a donor and the organization. And so while we do want to develop relationships and trust with the leaders at our organization, we want to make sure that the donor is familiar with multiple people at the organization. That way, when the executive director leaves suddenly for whatever reason, those relationships don't evaporate into thin air. I want those relationships to be with the organization and not just with one individual at the organization. But really, the reason that we talk about relationships, I want you to think of being two-way, right? It's multi-directional. So sometimes when I talk about cultivation, a development director who's new will think, okay, my job is to teach the donor everything I know about the organization. So I need to tell them stories and facts and figures, which is one piece of it, but really critical is learning about the donor themselves. It's about you learning about what their needs are, what their interests are philanthropically, what they would like to accomplish with their philanthropy. That's when you're going to start to get the really big gifts. And we can absolutely do that virtually. All right, so here's a basic cultivation plan. I like to have a one-page plan for everybody on my list. Like I said, start with 20 people and make a list for the year of what you're going to do with the people that you are trying to cultivate and build relationships with and ask for a gift. So you know what? You can't give a tour these days. How are you going to do a virtual tour? Whether it's pre-recorded or it's live and you literally hold up your iPhone and show them around. This is what's critical to remember as you're going virtual and tours in general. A tour of, your office, right? I sometimes joke, like, here's a computer, here's a fax machine, here's a copy machine, here's the snack room. That's not the kind of tour we're talking about. We're talking about a tour that shows impact. So are they meeting clients? Are they getting to see programs in action? For some of you, this may be easier than others, depending on what your programs and services are. But so it can be a pre-recorded tour, but how are you giving them a first-hand glimpse into the impact that you're having? So some of the activities here down the center column are that you're actually educating people about your organization. But so if you look at the second column, right, or the second row, a note on a newsletter. So of course you're going to send all of your donors your newsletter, but for your top 20 people that you're cultivating, you're going to pull it out of the stack and write a Post-it note on it that says, Dear Sally, I'm thinking about you. I hope you're interested in an article on page 2, or this reminded me of you, or notice this, right? Speak to the person so that they know that you're actually thinking about them and talking to them. Always, 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 the most critical part of cultivation is a coffee meeting. I use that to indicate a one-on-one meeting. And so that can definitely be done on Zoom. If you really want to go over the top, and the person's local in your community, drop off a little goodie bag with a few tea bags and some instant coffee and maybe a scone or cookies or something, and say, listen, I'd love to have a meeting, and let's meet on Zoom and we'll both have our tea or coffee and cookies. And so we want to have these one-on-one meetings in the safest way possible. I know some people are starting to meet outside or going on walks with donors. Wonderful. But you can absolutely do this over the phone or preferably over Zoom. The most important thing is don't make your donors learn new technology. So just ask them, how do they communicate with their kids and grandkids or their friends? What technology are they using? Are they using FaceTime? Then you should use FaceTime. If they're using Zoom or something else, you use that. In the final column, you'll notice the responsible party changes for some of these activities, and that's how you ensure that you really are building a relationship with the organization. Figure out a way for your potential donor to meet with lots of different people at the organization. All right, so one of the key things about cultivation is asking open-ended questions. So, what's new with you and your family? You're going to ask this whether you're on Zoom or whether you're in person. Why did you give in the first place, right? Tell us about yourselves. Why do you continue to give? Why is this organization important to you? So really getting to know somebody, that's what cultivation is all about. Finding out what motivates their giving. What interests you most about our organization? What changes have you observed in the community, at our organization, in the world? How are we different now that we're 12, 13 months into COVID? How are our services different? What are you seeing different about the needs in the community? How have your philanthropic interests changed, right? You have been, for the past 10 years, a great supporter of ours. Has anything changed because of COVID? You've got to know this before asking for a big gift. And how would you like to help, right? So clearly you're going to want to present some options, but how do you want to be involved? How do you want to help? Would you like to volunteer? So really, it's critical on your Zoom calls or on your one-on-one meetings or over the phone or over coffee, you want to get to know these donors so that you know how to ask them and what kind of gift to ask them for, what to be asking them for. But there's no better way than to ask them open-ended questions. Now, when you are meeting with a donor on Zoom, you don't want to present a big slide deck, right? You are trying to get to know them. You're not pitching people, right? Any ask, whether it's in person or over Zoom, it's not a pitch. But I think online and virtually, we can fall into a bad trap of sharing pictures and slides. Well, guess what? Then you're not looking at the person. And so I would strongly encourage you, if you have a slide or two, put it up for a moment just to look at it with your donor and then take it down. So then you're face to face again. All right, so whether it takes a few meetings or a few months or all year to build a relationship with your donor, depending on how strong of a relationship you had with the person prior to this engagement, or it'll depend on when you're ready to ask for a gift. Now, I would say that once you've met once or maybe twice face-to-face, one-on-one, and when I say face-to-face, I mean over Zoom or on the phone, it's time to ask for a gift, right? Because they're probably wondering what the heck all these meetings are about. You should be transparent about what the goal is. Tell people your primary responsibility is to make sure that this organization is well funded and well resourced, and you're out talking to people in the community who might be interested in supporting the organization in meaningful and impactful ways. and that you are during cultivation, you don't have to call it that, but you can say initially, listen, one of my responsibilities is to get to know people who have supported us in the past or people in the community. And so I'd love to get to know you a little bit better to see if you might be interested in getting involved in a bigger way, right? So that's the initial contact. You don't need to you can assure them, I'm not going to ask for a gift at this time, but yes, absolutely, we are looking for funders and supporters. And but let's take it off the table now so we can meet and find out if you're interested, and so that I can learn more about you. And then if it's appropriate and it feels good on both sides, we can take this relationship to the next step, and I can tell you about the needs of the organization. All right, so let's do another quick poll. So go back to your questions box if you would, and let me know how frequently, and we're gonna do 1, 2, 3, and 4 again. Oh, sorry, A, B, C, and D. How frequently do you right now ask individuals, meaning one person at a time, for a gift, right? So I'm not talking about bulk mail or your events, but I'm talking about when you ask a specific person for a specific dollar amount, whether it's over the phone or face-to-face, etc. All right, so let's see, less than 5 times a year is A, B is approximately 5 to 10 times a year, C is at least once a month, and D is 20 or more times per year. All right, so almost straight A's down the line. I'm getting a few B's. I see a D here and there, but really A's. Okay, good. Another C, another D. For the most part, A's and B's. All right, so I will tell you that if you take nothing else away from this hour session, for the vast majority of you, you know that you're not asking very frequently for individual gifts or major gifts, as we call them. And so right away, you have a huge opportunity in front of you to raise more money if you just got up the courage and made the time and the effort to build these relationships and ask for individual gifts. For those of you that are asking less than once a month, you know why you're not raising major gifts, because you're not out there doing it. So, but for those of you that are asking at least once a month or more than 20 times a year, it is important. It's a key metric that I look at when I'm evaluating a major gift officer or a development director. I look at how many times a year are they asking and how many gifts from those asks are they getting. And the reality is that I want to see you getting gifts about 80% of the time, 70 to 80% of the time that you ask. So I know that surprises some people. They're like, oh my gosh, that means I'm getting no's. At least 2 out of 10 times I'm asking, I'm getting no's. Well, yeah, because if you are getting 100% of yeses, that means that you're being too conservative, you're waiting too long, you're not asking until you're 100% sure the person is going to give to you. And if you're getting way less than that, like let's say only 1 person out of 10 people that you ask for a gift is giving to you, then I would say, whoa, slow down. You're not doing enough cultivation. You're just out there asking recklessly without doing research and without cultivating. So we want to increase the number of times you're asking, but also careful, thoughtful asking. So it's about quantity and about quality.
Hey, Amy, we have a couple people asking, when you say times per year, are you saying like you should ask one major donor 20 times per year? Or are you...
Oh, no. These are different people, right? So 5, so yes, thank you for that correction. So each person you're asking approximately once a year. I don't want to say that you can only ask a donor once a year, because sometimes there are occasions when it's perfectly appropriate to go back to a person a second time. No, I'm talking about, we started with a list of 20 people. So are you asking all of them for a gift, one gift, each of them every year? Does that clarify?
Yes, we had a lot of questions about that because I think a couple people were like, "Whoa, that's a lot," So I think,
Oh, yeah.
yeah,
Yes.
that
No.
clarifies and I think makes it a lot more clear for everyone.
Yes. So yes. So, yes, you're asking individuals once a year, approximately. So when I say when you're asking more than 20 times a year, okay, so if we want to do that poll again, if you answered wrong, then go right ahead and restate your, re-put in your answer. But yes, it's 20 individuals. D would be 20 people, once each. Okay, good. All right, good. So then we got a few more C's and D's, it looks like. All right.
And this really goes back to kind of what you were saying about like these, you should define these 20 folks and make sure you're asking at least once a year that you have the access and everything to them that you were laying out earlier. It's just not 20 random folks that you think, have the ability to give like off a donor search list or something. It's more of like, these are people that I feel confident have the interest in my organization. I have access to them and that they want to support me, right?
Exactly. That's exactly right. People that you've cultivated. Yes. So you're going to identify the best potential donors for big gifts at your organization. They're going to be your existing big donors and your loyal donors. You're going to ask them for more, and you're going to identify the top 20. Then you're going to work with them over the course of, a few months or maybe the course of the year to get to know them, to engage them in the organization, and then you're going to schedule a time to ask them for a gift. So yeah, so I just want to say that small amounts of time add up. So at the beginning, I asked, what's holding you up? What's preventing you from raising major gifts? And a lot of people responded time, resources, right? But I have to admit that a small amount of time really adds up. And I have seen organizations with really small resources, just a few staff members, do this really successfully. So one call to a donor a day is over 225 calls a year. So no, you're not calling the same donor every day, obviously. You've got a list of, maybe your top 100 donors, right? This goes beyond your top 20 list, but you want to call one donor every single workday. And you can say different things, right? For some of them, you might be inviting them to meet with you over Zoom. Others, you may be simply thanking them for past giving or a recent gift. Others, you may be checking in on how are they doing during the pandemic? What's going on with them? Would they like to get involved? Maybe there's a volunteer opportunity. Some of these calls, maybe to lower or middle level donors, you might want to invite them to join your monthly giving club. So there's lots of reasons to call donors every single day. And it gets you in the habit of talking to donors. It gets them familiar with you. It gets them hearing your voice and hearing from the organization at times when you're not just asking for a gift. So it's a wonderful habit to get into. And the only way that you're going to get a couple of meetings a month is by having these relationships grow with donors, and you're going to have to pick up the phone and call them. So 2 meetings a month. And we're talking about, of course, with different donors, right? So if you have 20 donors on your list, the goal is to meet with them each a couple of times a year. So once to get to know them and to discuss their philanthropic interests and get to know them better, invite them to be involved in your organization. The second meeting might be when you actually ask them for a gift. And this absolutely these days can be done virtually. All right, so, oops. All right, and you want to make sure when you're ready to ask that you have a really strong case for support. So this always, hopefully, this didn't change during the pandemic, or maybe it did slightly for some of you. Who do you serve? What has changed during the pandemic, right? Have you expanded your services? Have you had to close your doors? What has changed? Have you added new programs? Are there new needs in the community, right? What's different about your case for support? What do you need as an organization? What are your needs right now? based on what's happened in the pandemic. What is your plan for the future? What's going to change? What is changing? What has changed? How are you going to meet the needs of the community moving forward? And why do you need these funds right now, right? So you want to be able to make this strong case for support, whether you're sitting down in front of someone face to face, whether you're over Zoom, or whether you're on the phone. All right, so when you're ready to ask for a gift, it's critical that you actually transition to ask. I know this is challenging for lots of people, so I like to talk about the concept of asking permission to ask. So you might say something like, would it be okay if I shared some of our needs? That's a way to transition to an ask. Would it be okay if I shared some of our needs, right? So you might say something like, we would like to ask you to help one child stay safe after school by considering a gift of $5,000 to support our after school program. So you absolutely want to make this ask, but like I said, on Zoom, over the phone, in person. We would like to ask you to help one child stay safe after school. That's the impact. So you're really asking for impact first, and then you're telling them what it costs, right? By considering a gift of $5,000, that's what it costs to keep one child safe after school in our after school program. Is that something you could do? All right, so if you are on video, you want to, of course, check in and catch up. How are they doing? Has anything changed since the last time you spoke? Ask questions and listen carefully. Really, this is a trap that so many development directors fall into, and you should be doing 30% of the talking and 70% listening, even when you're asking. If you've always thought of a major gift ask as a pitch, scratch that, right? You've got to flip the script on that. Really, it's about inspiring and encouraging the donor to think about what they would like to accomplish philanthropically, and hopefully your vision and their vision match up. So ask questions, right? You can, of course, share a quick update about your organization as long as it doesn't take over the whole conversation. And then, of course, ask permission to ask, and thank and confirm. Make sure that you repeat back what they have committed to, if they've committed to something, if you're so fortunate that they did, and make sure that you understand it, how they would like to get the gift, and thank them, of course. All right, so now we are in stewardship. You've asked for the gift, and now it's time to thank and follow up. You know, this is one of the most critical parts of the asking of the whole major gift cycle, because if you don't thank and follow up properly, you are not going to get a gift next year. And you've worked so hard to build this relationship with this donor, you don't want to ruin it. And so you want to thank in multiple ways by multiple people. That means have the executive director make a thank you call, have a board member handwrite a thank you note, development director, if you're lucky enough to be one, you can send an email. Also follow up a few months after the gift was made. If you asked in person, then you should also be thanking in person and let them know how that gift was used or how it's going with the program or service that they contributed to. All right, so we've got step one, we covered donor identification. You're going to build your list. Step two is cultivation, really building those relationships. Step three is solicitation, that's the ask. And step four is stewardship, the thank you and the follow-up. So I'm going to talk for another 2 or 3 or 4 minutes, and then it'll be time for Q&A. So if you have a question, go ahead and feel free to put it in the questions box now. All right, so 5 reasons to ask in case you're not convinced already. One is you won't raise money if you don't ask. So don't let the pandemic or COVID stop you. That's just an excuse. Honestly, I have seen people, organizations smaller than yours, raise hundreds of thousands and even millions of dollars. I've seen this year 4, 5, 6, and even 7-figure gifts raised over Zoom and over the phone. Organizations that are very serious about asking for money did not let the pandemic stop them. And what we have found is that asking virtually is remarkably efficient and effective. And so, but if you don't ask, you won't raise money. All right, so this may come as a shock to you, but some people have more money right now. And there's actually been lots of reports recently in the paper about how those people who have jobs and have kept jobs have more money right now. They're not traveling, they're not going out to eat, they're not going to the theater. People actually have more money in their bank accounts than they ever have. And of course, the stock market has continued to rise this year steadily. There are people in plenty of sectors and industries that have done very well this year. So don't make the assumption that people don't have money. People are eager to help. And your job as a fundraiser or as a leader of a nonprofit is to give people an opportunity to help. You can't do your work without them, and they can't make the world a better place without you. And so you are partners in this project. All right, I'm going to go so far as to say that you're being negligent if you don't ask. If you are responsible for fundraising in any way at your nonprofit, you need to ask. And if you are not actively engaged in this kind of fundraising, you're actually being negligent. And of course, your nonprofit needs funding. So I do hope that you will ask virtually. Don't wait until you can get back together in person. Don't let that be an excuse. So finally, I'm just going to say that you don't want to make assumptions about what your donors will or won't do or can or can't do. Too often we think, they won't meet with me or they won't give or they can't give. Don't make that assumption for your donors. Get out and talk to them, ask them, find out. You won't know until you ask and talk to them and have the conversation and tell them what your needs are. Share what's going on. Now, one thing I would say is that you don't want to be fundraising from a position of desperation. There is a real important difference between desperation and urgency. Okay, all of your causes, I'm guessing, are urgent, right? But that doesn't mean you have to be desperate. So an example of urgency in a positive way is, people are dying, well, not in a positive way, I didn't mean that, but for your fundraising efforts, people are dying from cancer every day, or in the environment is, global warming is ruining the environment every day. Those are urgent causes, right? But, and so it's important, it's critical for people to give right now to make sure that we find cures for diseases and that we clean the environment. Those are urgent causes. Now, that doesn't mean that those organizations are desperate in the way that if you go to a donor and say, oh my God, we can't make payroll, we can't pay our utility bill. Nobody wants to throw money down a hole where it's not going to do good. So hopefully your organization can be fundraising from a position of strength and saying, listen, we want to find a cure. We're helping clean the environment. We're taking care of more animals. We're sheltering more people. And so please help us. And that is urgent, but not desperate. All right, so we're going to get to questions, but if you want to hear more from me or take my Major Gifts Challenge, you can sign up at amyeisenstein.com/challenge. I've got lots of freebies and great resources on my site for you. And I will take you through step by step how to raise major gifts all year long. If you're really serious about raising money, you might be thinking about a capital campaign. And so I have a free capital campaign checklist and timeline, and also lots of other free resources and goodies for you at the capitalcampaigntoolkit.com. So I hope you'll join me there. So we've covered how to identify prospects, how to build relationships, step 2, how to ask for money virtually and in person. And then of course, it's critical that you express gratitude. All right, so that's all I've got for today. I'm happy to hang around and answer questions.
Amy, I'll have to say, I think this is one of the, I sent Stephen a note and said, I think this is one of the most practical major gift presentations I've ever seen, with just such amazing, like, simple steps that you can take. I had to take a screenshot of the one call a day slide. I'm going to use that for some of my own personal goals.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate that.
But we do have some really excellent questions. So we've got about 11 minutes before the top of the hour, and I want to make sure we kind of stay to that. But I'd love if we can do maybe just a little bit of a fire drill here, and I'll can read you some questions and just see if we can get through as many as possible. Would that be okay?
Yeah, go for it.
All right. So I want to start with Christine's question. I thought it was really great. She said, "We've been very fortunate to have greatly exceeded our yearly goal already. Do we continue to ask or just check in and keep the relationship going? We're running just a small fundraiser for the spring. Do we aim at the smaller donors only, or ask major donors through too? How do you think about cultivating after you've met your goal?"
Go, Christine. You know what? Then you raise your goal and you expand your programs and services. You know, the best example I can give of this is, Harvard has a multi-billion-dollar endowment. And I can guarantee you that not a single fundraiser at Harvard University loses 1 minute of sleep worrying about that they have enough money or that they've raised too much. So you can always, build your reserve, build your endowment, expand your programs and services. Unless you're telling me that you don't have any more needs, then I would say keep fundraising. Fundraise, fundraise, fundraise.
Awesome. Want to also congratulate Betsy, who at the beginning of the presentation mentioned that she got a 350,000 capital pledge over the phone just last week.
Woohoo!
So that one. Let's see. So another person mentioned, you were talking about, having your 20 people to call and things like that. But, like, is it best to have some kind of monetary goal when you're also raising major gifts, like to go along with your kind of personal goals for how many people you're going to call?
Oh, for sure. You want to have an overall fundraising goal, your major gift goal, and actually a specific ask amount for each person that you're thinking that would give. And so, yes, you definitely want to have all sorts of layers of goals and specific targets when you are raising money, for sure. Did that answer the question?
I think so. Yeah, I think that was kind of the heart of it, and I would agree with you that you definitely want to be able to communicate when you're speaking with your donors what your goals are and what the impact of those goals are going to be, right? So I think that's a great advice. Let's see, I'm clicking through here. I know there was a couple different questions about wealth screening software and, like, how to best utilize that. There was a couple different questions around, like, should you use that to build a prospecting list? So can you kind of give, I'm sure you have many thoughts about wealth screening tools, but I'd love to hear kind of your thoughts about that in general.
Yeah, so a wealth screening tool doesn't build your list per se. It helps you identify those already on your list who have bigger capacity than you were aware of. So in my experience, if you just identify one potential major donor or get one gift as a result of wealth screening, Generally, it more than covers the cost of the wealth screening, so it's a good investment, but only if you're going to use it and only if you're going to go out and ask for major gifts. Too often I see organizations screen their list, but then they sort of revert back to their old habits and don't necessarily use it. I will also say that wealth screening is one tool. It never replaces asking donors questions or speaking to donors. And I always go in with the assumption that the wealth screening information is somewhat incorrect. And so, you know, you use it as a jumping off point, but it's not the end all be all, because it's not 100% perfect, but if it does point you in the direction of a few donors or potential donors that you weren't aware of, you know, it can be worth its weight in gold. So I'm advocating for it. I'm a fan of it, but you have to use it carefully and with an understanding of what it actually can do for you.
I think that's great advice, and I would totally agree. Kind of on that same vein, but maybe maybe slightly adjacent, is that there was some other questions also about prospecting and finding, you know, if you have either a small donor base or you're a very new organization and you want to try to find major donors, but you don't yet have any, what are your advice for organizations like that who need to, they don't have their 20 identified, or maybe they don't have any, you know, identified that they want to build
Right.
relationships with? How do you start identifying those people if you're new or if you don't have that figured out just yet?
Right. So major donors don't make a major gift as their first gift to any organization. I would say ever. I mean, it's, you know, virtually unheard of. You know, maybe Mackenzie Scott is the exception, but, you know, don't look at her. She is so the exception, not the rule. And so what I find is that in every organization I've ever been into, they tell me, you know, we don't have a lot of major donors or we don't have any major donors, and yet there in their database, it's an absolute gold mine. So first and foremost, you're going to start with your existing donors. Now, for the organizations that are new or don't have a big donor list, you are going to have to grow your donor base. Nobody's going to give you a major gift right off the bat as their first gift, or at least what they would consider a major gift. It actually might be a major gift for your organization, but not from the perspective of a donor. So they might be able to give you $1,000, and that's not a huge gift for them. Maybe it is a big gift for you, but all donors start giving small. They test you. They see, how do you respond to a gift? Do you thank them properly? Do you use it well? Do you grow your programs and services? And then over time, as they trust you and as you build a relationship, they will give you ever increasing gifts. So build your donor base. You talk to your staff and your board members and find out if their friends and family would be interested in supporting your organization. And then you do outreach, you do volunteer opportunities, some events to grow your base of support. You can do things online, but really go through people that you know. Start with your board members. Ask them who in their circles would be interested in learning more about and getting involved and potentially supporting your organization. If you just go after people for money, you're not going to make much progress. Get them engaged first. It does take time. Fundraising is not fast or easy. If it was, everybody would be doing it.
So from what I'm hearing from you is, if you don't feel like you have your major donors identified yet, you need to work on building your donor base first.
Yeah.
Any gift is a great gift, or any support really is great support. It could be a volunteer, it could be just a donation of any level, and then start to cultivate those relationships. And over time, you should be able to start to identify individuals who have the capacity to potentially be a more major donor to your organization. But it starts with having a base of donors that you can build those relationships with.
That's right. And in my experience, most of your donors could give more than they're already giving if they were so inspired. And so don't make, like I said in one of my, almost my last slide, don't make the assumption that they can't give more or that they won't give more. Build a relationship with your existing donors and ask them to support you in bigger ways. What we've found is that most people who give through the mail or give to an event or give online, they're giving only in those scenarios a fraction of what they potentially could give. Like if somebody mails me for a cause, I get a direct mail letter, I might send in $100. Let's say I send in $100. If they sat down with me and made a strong case for support and I was very interested, I could give them $1,000, which is 10 times what I would normally just send in the mail. It really is about the personal touch with a few key supporters. So pick out the people that you think have the potential, that are already involved, that are already interested, and sit down and talk to them about giving more. All right, I think that's probably a great place to end, but I'm happy to take questions via email if people want to be in touch and email me.
Okay, well, thanks so much for your time today, Amy. Again, just great practical advice. Appreciate it so much. For all those who spent the hour with us, we really appreciate your time and hope that you were able to learn something today. We will be sending out the recording and the slide deck later this afternoon, and we'll make sure we include Amy's resources here and her contact information. So again, thank you for everyone attending. Have a great rest of your Wednesday. Thanks so much, everyone.
Thank you.